This is what happens, Vince. This is what happens when there's total chaos on the back end. Vince and I were sitting here. See, if you would get here earlier.
I know.
I'm going to blame you for this whole thing.
I'll take it.
People listening on the radio are like, what are they talking about? What's the inside joke now? Vince and I, we started venting to each other about different things, non-related to football, all like other things. And then it's like, oh, I got to hit the show open over here. And then usually for those who watch the YouTube feed on either Irish Breakdown or Sports Radio WSBT, we've got this 30-second countdown. Well, I forgot to hit the countdown clock before I hit live. So it's just our faces. We're kind of smiling for the camera. Here we are.
I knew I should have gotten in a little earlier because I knew we had something to vent about.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So that is on me.
Yep.
It's on me.
Didn't have a show yesterday. Happy Labor Day to everybody. Happy long weekend. It was a long weekend. Notre Dame doesn't play, of course. This is a bye week, and that's what's weird about the whole schedule. Notre Dame doesn't play again until the 13th. So this is kind of what would be a Monday show, which I guess is fitting since yesterday, they played on Sunday and everything was chaotically messed up anyway. But we're going to have a lot of comments from Marcus Freeman from after Notre Dame's loss to Miami Sunday night. I was down there, and I'm not going to bore you with the details right now of getting I'll save it for a little bit because we've got some football to talk about first. It was interesting for me. I do want to say this though, Vince, before we start.
Okay.
I've got an assignment for you from here and going forward. Okay. This can be for people who watch. This can be a fun little project for people who watch in the YouTube as well. I got to actually get my pen.
Okay.
So my boss here at the station, Jim, he asked me to start sending him like little outtakes, clips from the show that he can put in on-air promos and that kind of stuff. So the problem is, as I sort of detailed with my little countdown blunder there, anyone who watches the show knows that I'm not just hosting the show, but I'm producing as well. So I've got a lot of buttons to push and all this different kind of stuff, because we're doing a live show. But, that's typically, like something a producer would do.
This is true.
We don't have a producer, because I'm doing all this other stuff. So if we say something that you feel is usable,
oh boy,
just say keeper and I'll write down the time and maybe hopefully I'll find it later. Deal?
That sounds good to me. Yeah.
It could be something you say, I say, whatever. Doesn't have to be me.
I will do my best. Okay. You can double my salary and then I'll do it.
Okay. Well, I feel I don't want to go there, but yeah, I know. I love this. Our old friend, Penn State Sports Talk, the Penn State troll that we've grown here. He comes in. We are 1-0.
Who wouldn't be?
As if there's not a difference between playing Nevada, and the number 10 team in the nation. You feel like there's a little difference in the level of competition, huh?
You know what Penn State didn't do, Sean, over the weekend? Cover.
Really?
No, they did not.
Technically, Notre Dame didn't either, but
well, I'm just saying we're not talking about Notre Dame right now.
No, that's true.
We're talking about Penn State.
We're talking about.
We'll have plenty of time to talk about Notre Dame.
Don't come in here gloating if you're Penn State with this weak nuts stuff that you're playing, and tell us about how how great it is to be 1-0.
They're going to be 3-0 too, because I believe their first 3 games are a freaking joke. So
talk to me in a month when Oregon comes to we'll talk then.
100%. But enjoy that number 2 ranking or whatever they are now. No, maybe 3, whatever they are. It's all smoke and mirrors when you don't play anybody.
This on the web.
Oh, did you know?
Oh, Siri.
But they definitely didn't cover. I can tell you that. They definitely didn't cover.
It's true.
That was my dog of the week. Was Nevada.
Good teams win. Great teams cover.
There you go. That's right. And we know that Penn State's not great. So there you go.
Anyway, keeper. If it's worth using, say I'll tell you this. I wish I had. I'll say this about Miami right now. I wish I had a recording of the press box PA announcer in Miami. That
Really?
guy was a butcher of names.
Oh, no.
Like the Notre Dame names, it was like the whole Notre Dame media section would just laugh, because you know how it, like, for those who haven't been in the press box, there's a PA announcer who will say like the ball carrier, whoever, yard gain, loss, whatever it happens to be, who made the tackle, that kind of stuff. After every play, they'll announce it. Well, like, so the Notre Dame players, it was like Kingston Viliamasu.
Wow.
Yeah. Drarick Bowen.
Really?
Seriously. Drarick Bowen, something to that effect. It was interesting.
Was he a Miami grad?
He sounded like a very, very nice, very pleasant guy.
Okay.
But the names were just not his thing, which is kind of like
the whole point
you've got that
yeah,
job that's
right.
supposed to be your thing. Fortunately, it's just for media consumption. It wasn't, for the public. So
good thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, a lot of stuff to get to today because we haven't had a chance to talk about Sunday night's game, 27-24. Miami knocks off Notre Dame. Both teams still in the top 10. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The new AP rankings came out today. But we went into this game, of course, kind of blindfolded, Vince, because they had a new first-time quarterback. We all knew that after an extended training camp battle. What we didn't know was what would the plan of attack be. But we found out pretty quickly with CJ Carr. It was RPO heavy with a heavy screen pass approach as well. Here's Marcus Freeman explaining why that was the plan.
That was the plan going in. Like I said before, it's never a big deal who's starting unless you're talking about the quarterback or maybe the offensive line. And we got a lot of capable guys that can help us win, and you got to play them, right? You got to play them in this type of environment, this type of game, in the heat. This is going to help them throughout the season, right? We got every goal we have is still ahead of us, and at the end of the day, we don't speak about championships, it's about reaching our full potential. And all
right. Well, unfortunately, that was not the cut that I played. So the producers already screwed this up. Basically, he talked about like getting CJ Carr some confidence, getting him in a rhythm, and those kind of things with with the screen passes and that kind of stuff. So, what your thoughts on that? I guess the plan of attack that they went with.
I mean, they threw the ball a little more than I thought that they would. I figured it would be, RPOs. I understand you're reading it, and it's either going to be a handoff or it's going to be a throw, and CJ does a good job of reading RPOs, and so it didn't surprise me a whole lot that they would go that route. I think it surprised me a little bit how many times he pulled and threw. They threw a pick and had a fumble off of those screens as well. So, obviously didn't help a whole lot. But at the same time, like, I get it. Those are fairly easy passes unless you're throwing them into traffic. I guess it makes sense. It
was a little more conservative. I thought that they would be fairly conservative, but it was even more conservative than I thought it would be. And it's not that CJ Carr made the wrong reads. I think that he did. And, Marcus Freeman kind of talked about it, and we'll hear some other cuts from him here in a minute. Hopefully we actually play the appropriate cut at the right time going forward. But, like they said, essentially, like as the game went on, it's like, well, maybe you need to actually just hand that to Jeremiyah Love a little bit more often. I think that what was more concerning to me than even a downfield approach with the passing game and all the screens, because like I went back and counted, I think it was like at least the first 5 passes were, like out there screen passes. And on the perimeter, what concerned me is like, look, you're Notre frickin' Dame, right, and why aren't you running the ball more with the backfield that you've got? Again, CJ Carr made the right reads in terms of the RPOs, but at some point you just probably need to call a running play every now and then.
Yeah, I mean, he made the right call sometimes, most of the time, but not every time. Right. And that was part of the issue. But again, you're right. They should have called more things down the field, and it should have been that way, because when he did throw down the field, then they generally had success. The other issue, Sean, and I'm sure we're going to get to this, he didn't have a whole lot of time to throw. I mean, they were calling plays based on the ineffectiveness, I would say, of the offensive line, specifically the tackles.
Well, and that's why, like, again, with the plan of attack that they went with the screens, it's like, okay, get it on the perimeter, let these guys make some plays, avoid that pass rush. I do wonder how much of that game plan wasn't just about CJ Carr and the fact that he was starting his first game on the road, and instead a concern for Miami's defensive front and kind of trying to negate that.
I think maybe they started off like, okay, we got to get him some easy throws. We got to get him into a rhythm. But I think later on, to be honest with you, I think it became, we got to get the ball out of his hands quick because he's going to die. I mean, look what happened during the 2-minute drill at the end of the game. I've never seen a pocket close so fast in my life. I mean, he didn't have a prayer back there during that last drive. I mean, they just pinned their ears back and came after him, and both tackles, it's like they weren't even playing. I mean, they were not an impediment to the Miami rush in any way, shape, or form. And so I think part of it was the ineffectiveness of the offensive line and pass pro too.
Well, let's go ahead and play that cut. The offensive line, the defense. There's a little about the defensive line at the end of this cut, but essentially the question was posed to Marcus Freeman in the post-game press conference. Look, you've always said this is going to be and is an offensive line, defensive line driven team. So did those units, especially the offensive line, meet the standard that Marcus Freeman has for this program in that game against Miami? And here is the answer that Marcus Freeman has to that.
The effort was there. I guess you got to give credit to their team. I told the guys in the locker room, my challenge, we got to play harder, longer. You know what? We played hard, but they played hard too. And, both of us played harder. We had some self-inflicted wounds that we can't have. But I think our guys played well. Our O-line played. I mean, they stepped up to the challenge. We didn't always run the ball. Listen, that 2-minute situation where everybody knows they got to throw the ball. I mean, you got Styles in there because Knapp went down. It's a tough situation, and so I'm not going to evaluate them just off of the 2-minute situation. We got to find a way to win the game in that situation. But I thought for the most part of the game, our O-line did a good job. D-line, I want to be more dominant. My expectations for that unit is to dominate the game in the run and the pass, put pressure on the quarterback and stop the run. And credit to Miami, we weren't able to do that, but that's my expectation for those guys.
Okay, so we'll skip the defensive line comments for now because we'll talk defense more here in a little bit. I want to stick with the offense right now, but I mean, I think that probably there's a list of things that were disappointments from a Notre Dame perspective, but I think that probably the offensive line is at the top of my list. It was a bad night for anyone who's defended Joe Rudolph with, like he has been one of the focal points of a lot of fans, and look, they started 3 guys on the offensive line who started in the college football playoff semifinals last year, as well as Ashton Craig, who of course started last year.
Would have
center. Yeah. He started last year as a center. Yeah. If he had stayed healthy, he would have still been starting in the college football playoff. And, Anthony Knapp looks stiffer and less athletic in year 2 as a sophomore than he did as a true freshman starting at left tackle last year. I'm sorry. That's how he looked Sunday night. And you wonder if Charles Jagasaw was healthy and starting at right guard and Gerby Lambert and Sullivan Absher on the bench, would Anthony Knapp still be the left tackle if Charles Jagasaw were here? Yep. Do you think that he would?
100%.
And that's a problem. Yep. That's a problem right now because you look at that line. Look, the tackles, because I don't want to completely absolve Emil Wagner from this, even though he was going up against Ruben Bain. But, okay,
doesn't matter.
Bain is their best defensive lineman. So I just, I do want to say that. But it's not like Reuben Bain was a household name coming into this season by any means. Like Emil Wagner was more of a household name than Reuben Bain. But like most of Emil Wagner's work was against their best defensive line. So I just, again, I'm not.
You can throw that out there, but doesn't mean he had a good game.
But yeah, that is the fact. But the tackles probably played worse than any of the offensive linemen out there.
Yep.
Like put whatever stock that you want in Pro Football Focus's grading system, how they grade the linemen. Ashton Craig had the best pass block grade, which you would expect from the center. I mean, he's in the center, like the middle of the line. You expect the center is going to have, just because of opportunities, but he had an 83.2. Schrouth was next, the left guard, 61.1. Emil Wagner, All-American candidate at right tackle, had a pass block grade of 38.4, according to PFF. Sullivan Absher, 29.8. Knapp, 12.8. Styles Prescott, who, of course, came in for Knapp when Knapp had cramps at the end of the game, 10.5. And Gerby Lambert had just a 2.4 pass block grade. That just not good.
I mean, look, the reality of the situation, if I was going to rank these guys by watching the film, and I rewatched it last night, and we're going to put out upon further review later on tonight. But, what I saw was, Craig and Schrouth arguably were the two better linemen. Okay. They weren't perfect by any stretch, but they were the two best. Then there's quite a gap. And then you get to the combo that played right guard. I think you get to those two guys, and, it's their first start. So, there's a little bit of a pass there, but I think they would fall next. And then it's Emil Wagner, and then it's Bill, and then it's Anthony Knapp. And it's Anthony Knapp had arguably the worst game I've ever seen him play.
Yeah.
And that's saying something.
And again, this is a guy who started 12 games, would have started all
Correct.
13 if he hadn't gotten injured against Penn State in the semifinals. How does that happen in years? Like, there should be growth from, like, again, I can forgive and grade him on a curve because of the situation they were in last year once Jagasaw was hurt, because it was either him or Tosh Baker.
Freshman. Yeah.
Yeah. It was him or Tosh Baker. And, we saw Baker in some, little flashes, and we saw why it was Anthony Knapp last year. But you got to get better after, like, what was last year about if you're not better in your first start of game two. Not only are you not better, you were markedly worse based on what we saw Sunday night compared to last year.
It's just like you expect the most improvement from week 1 to week 2 for a football team. You expect the most improvement from year 1 to year 2 from freshman to sophomore year.
Yeah.
I mean, you just do. And the defensive ends were going around him. They were going through him. They were going inside of him. I mean, there was once he got bull rushed so badly that he ended up on his backside in the lap of CJ Carr. I mean, you can't do that. You can't just fall backwards and just let the guy come through you. It was bad. It was really, really bad. And I've tried to be as even keel as possible when talking about Anthony Knapp and Joe Rudolph and, all of it, offensive line in general. And you and I had the conversation, last week about what position group would we be most surprised that didn't play well. You remember that conversation? I'm pretty sure we all said offensive line, and they were awful as a 5-man crew, 6 or 7 guys played. But as a unit, the offensive line was awful. And that is supposed to be Notre Dame's calling card, is the offensive line. O-line, all of the things, right?
But
awful.
This is, we've said it like this. We thought coming into this season that this could be their best offensive line since the 2017 Notre Dame offensive line that won the Joe Moore Award. This is supposed to be a team that is, has that as one of its goals out there. Now, Elaine Fernandez, I'm not sure exactly if I'm saying that name properly, Alain, says they faced a good D-line. Yes, I will give them that.
Okay.
And I will say we probably underrated Miami's defensive line. Probably their offensive line as well. We thought that they were both good, but if you're Notre Dame and you've legitimately got the kind of offensive line that you say that you've got, again, Joe Moore Award, best offensive line in the nation. That's who that award goes to. Like if that's what you think this offensive line is, okay, it's one thing to have not a great night, but you can't be horrible. Correct. I don't care who it is, because like this, this Miami defensive line, as good as they are, and again, I will give them that they are good. But,
sure.
Let's see as the season goes on just how really good they are. Are they going to be a great defensive line? This is not like Clemson was at 2020 when they had all the first round draft picks on that defensive line. They are not like Clemson, Georgia with 1 million first round draft picks good. Like they're really looking at them. They're no better than Texas A&M last year. And Texas A&M, remember, had a couple of first round draft picks on that line that Notre Dame stood toe to toe with. And again, as a true freshman, that Anthony Knapp played fairly well against. And Sam Pendleton is a first-time starter, played fairly well against, regardless of what you think of that decision, a year removed from it. But my point is Miami's defensive line was good, but they're certainly not so great that Notre Dame's offensive line should have looked like that Sunday night.
Completely agree. Completely agree. That's not something. It's not a throwaway. Like you can't be like, well, they went up against a really good defensive line. Okay, well, you're supposed to be a really good offensive line. So at the very least, it should be a stalemate.
Yeah, you should win. You're going to win a few battles. You're going to lose.
Right. They lost all the battles, like everyone. And if you go back, you don't have to know anything about football. Just look at the helmets. You got white helmets and you got gold helmets. Okay. And if you look at anytime Notre Dame was on offense, the white helmets were going towards Notre Dame way more than the gold helmets were going towards Miami.
We're moving. Yeah.
Plain and simple. And the same thing happened on the other side of the football. I know we're going to talk defense later. The same thing happened over there. Notre Dame got beat in the trenches like they stole something. That's why they lost the game. And Miami didn't play perfect by any stretch, by the way, because Notre Dame still had an opportunity at the end of the game to win this game. As garbage as they played, they still had a chance to win this game, which, by the way, is still why they're in the top 10. Okay, so the season's not a throwaway, but we can be critical of the way that they play. That's our job. We are supposed to be critical and call out what we see. We saw a team that is supposed to be offensive and defensive line driven fail.
Yeah,
they failed. They were not offensive defensive line driven on Sunday night. Doesn't mean they can't be moving forward, but they certainly weren't on Sunday night. And that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, they failed the test on game one. Like if each week is a test, which it is, because like every week we've said that like every week now you go through the season, we're going to react and overreact to whatever we see, because that's how football works. The cyclic nation of football is we're going to react to what we see. Each week is a different chapter. Each week is a different test that you pass or you fail. And not everything failed, because, at the end of the day, it was still a 3-point loss to a top 10 team on the road to open up your season. So there were still good things, but for Notre Dame, like you've got another physical test coming up on September 13th against Texas A&M. And what are you going to do against them? And if you end up passing enough tests as this season goes on, if you can pass 11 tests now as you go through this, you're going to be back in the college football playoff. How much are you going to improve from this to that in December? Because the kind of teams, as we saw last year, the kind of teams that you're going to face in December are going to be the kind of teams that can push you just as much as Miami pushed you Sunday night. And are you actually going to be able to go up against that?
Well, and the thing is, we have gotten so used to Notre Dame being, if not dominant, at least competitive in the trenches, since Marcus Freeman got to Notre Dame. And that's why it's the most disappointing game that I think I've seen in a long time. And that includes, Marshall and all of those other games. Like, they just got dominated up front, and that's not a Notre Dame team as we know them now. That's why it's so disappointing to me, is that they didn't play like Notre Dame. It's one thing to get played, and if you get beat, you get beat. Like, it's a game. Like, that's how it happens. But the identity of this team is supposed to be up front, and they just got whooped up front. Like that. It's that's so
honestly the biggest disappointment to me, because and I said last week that my confidence was maybe Miami would have their wins early in the game. But my confidence was based on the track record that we have with this Notre Dame program as the game wore on, just like against Texas A&M last year, and just like against Georgia in the playoffs, and just like against Penn State in the playoffs, as the game wore on, that Notre Dame's physicality and mentality would win out. And, look, to their credit, they obviously played better in different stretches. They were able to find the end zone a few times. It's not like they just got run out of the stadium like Florida State did to Alabama.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not like that.
They didn't quit.
Total embarrassment. This was two top teams going head to head, but they were outplayed up front by a more physical Miami team in the trenches on both sides of the ball.
So disappointing, because that's not who Notre Dame is under Marcus Freeman. That's the disappointing part, right? So, look, they didn't quit, right? They didn't get run out of the building like Alabama did. So you give them credit for that. I always have trouble giving credit for teams not quitting, because that's what you're supposed to do. But I get it. Right. I understand.
That was like a very politically correct Marcus Freeman answer. Let's do a compliment sandwich here. There wasn't a whole lot of critical in the middle, so like
I get it.
The meat layer in that sandwich was pretty thin.
Yes.
But he finished, like, to hear you talk about effort, like no one wants to hear about effort at this point. Did they do their job or not? Because that's where we are. You just went to a national championship game. And again, 3 of these guys started in the semifinal, and 3 of them, would have started in the national championship game as well if Knapp hadn't gotten injured in the semifinal. So I don't think we can fall back on effort at this point. Like, we're playing big boy football now. Did you do your job or not? And unfortunately, they didn't do their job.
Not at all. And the thing is, as bad as Notre Dame played, they still had a chance to win. Yes. So that tells me a couple different things. It tells me that, okay, if Miami is this great top 5 team as they are ranked now, then Notre Dame played toe-to-toe with them poorly and probably should have won if they played better. You know what I mean? And so, like, okay, well, there's room to be optimistic with the way Notre Dame played, because they were in it at the end. Like, we would be having a different conversation. No, we would still be critical of the line play and of the mistakes that Notre Dame played. If the defense gets one stop at the end of the game, right, I have full confidence Notre Dame goes down and scores and wins the game. The offense was churning at that point. And so we're talking about a win, a sloppy win, but we're still talking about a win, and it's a different scenario, right? And the voters saw that too. That's why Notre Dame is still 9th. Like, we can be as critical as we need to be, and we will be.
10 teams that went down to the wire road game. That's absolutely, like, look at where Alabama fell to.
There's
being in the top 10.
Ton of football left. What we had to dissect Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois last year. And now we're dissecting them losing to Miami on the road.
Hold your thoughts. We're way behind now. Okay. I knew we would be trying to cram all this content into an hour and 40 minutes tonight. So let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get more. We'll talk a little bit about the defense. We haven't touched on that yet. We'll finish up with some offensive thoughts as well. But we'll do that coming up next. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues on this Tuesday, rolling through this first hour. Man, we got backed up there just getting into offensive line talk and smacking it around with Vince DeDario. I'm Sean Stires, and we've got a couple of comments stacked up here. We got a few stacked up in the YouTube chat. Mr. Paula, what? Why can I never read these YouTube handles? Whatever your handle is, it's something I can read. Make it simple.
Yeah.
So he says, he or she says, I'm skeptical of the Chris Ash hate. It was a bad game, but it's game one of year one. Criticism is fine, but it's too early to call for his job. Hold on. And Joe.pm.17. See, very, very simple. That is Joe.17pm. Remember Golden's brutal safety blitz against Ohio State in 22. Chill on Ash a little bit. Vince, go ahead.
Okay. No one's calling for anyone's job. No one, I mean, at least we aren't. Like, their fans might be, but like we are not calling for anybody's job. I'm not doing that at all. Now, when we get to defense, I'll criticize the football play on the field of the defense. And
let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and talk defense.
Okay.
Right now. That's what I was using that as our segue, because we've only got so much time left.
I hear you.
We got a lot of things to talk about. So
defensively, my biggest issue was it just felt like the aggressiveness was taken out of the defense that we knew and loved from last year.
Yes.
They played very passive. I didn't like a lot of the zone that they played. They played more zone than I think they should have. That's where Miami had some success throwing the football, because they were throwing it underneath and running with it. And I went through every defensive play and clocked whether they were in man, whether they were in zone, whether they were tight, or whether they were playing off coverage. And surprise, surprise, they had the most success when they were playing off coverage in zone. And they meaning Miami. Miami had the most success at that point.
I was going to say, when you said they, I thought you were talking about Notre Dame had the most success.
Pronouns, man, they get me every time. Yeah. But I just feel like the defense wasn't allowed to be as aggressive as it has been in the past. And when you take the aggressiveness away from these athletes, from these guys that are so used to being aggressive, they don't know what to do.
Yes.
That's my problem.
Just pour that all over me, Vince. Pour that all over me. Everything that you just said. Yes, absolutely.
Keeper, baby. Keeper. Keeper.
Everything was passive. That's the game plan on both sides, was a passive game plan. Notre Dame was not attacking. That's what Notre Dame is, especially like talking about the offensive line, defensive line thing. But like when you're talking about specific to the defense that we're talking about right now, look, Chris Ash said over and over again, both in the spring after he got here and during training camp and the couple opportunities we got to talk to him, I'm running the Notre Dame defense. I'm not running the Chris Ash defense. Well, if that's the case, like that's not what we saw Sunday night. That was not the Notre Dame defense. No. That was Chris Ash's fingerprints, footprint, whatever, all over what used to be the Notre Dame defense, because like the players may be the same, the uniforms may be the same, but that's not what we saw. I've got to call BS on that. Besides Malachi Toney, the freshman slot receiver who had the big, the touchdown, and like he ended up as a true freshman leading them in receiving. And this is the matchup that I was looking at. Malachi Toney, freshman, against veteran Alabama transfer Devontae Smith, the nickel. And now Devontae Smith wasn't covering him all the time, but Malachi Toney, their slot, just feasted on Notre Dame. And the biggest reason why is because of all this zone coverage. Like, I get mixing in zone coverage, but like Miami doesn't have a Jeremiyah Smith. Like that's why Ohio State has so much success against man-to-man, because they've just got better athletes at the receiver positions than most teams do. And we obviously saw what happened in the national championship game with Smith, but Notre Dame's DBs are long and physical and athletic, but playing zone defense takes away the advantage of all that. Like, you can't be a physical cornerback when you're playing off zone, like you were talking about. Like, they are strong and they are physical. They could have manhandled Miami's wide receivers if they had just let them manhandle Miami's wide receivers. There was no one on that Miami team who struck fear in you like a Jeremiyah Smith or like an elite receiver. Notre Dame's DBs are elite, but the scheme that they played took that eliteness away from them, took that advantage away from them, and that's how Miami ultimately had so much success.
I completely agree. And the other part of it was not only the lack of aggressiveness on the back end, but the lack of aggressiveness up front, because you allowed a kid who has a ton of starts under his belt in Beck to just sit back there and do whatever he wanted. Once they started pressuring him and getting to him, he started making mistakes. Amazing how that happens. We as novices, we're not college football coaches, right? But we all knew that Carson Beck is not a mobile quarterback. Okay. He's got some good, decent footwork in the pocket and things like that. And he, to his credit, the 2 touchdown passes that he threw were kind of off, platform, falling back, not just a straight drop back. So, I give credit to him. But if you put pressure on him, he's going to make mistakes. They never did that. He was so comfortable in the pocket because Notre Dame could not get pressure on him no matter what they did.
It's a double advantage for a veteran quarterback like him. Like, zone is typically going to confuse someone like CJ Carr, a first-time starter, a young quarterback. When you're playing zone stuff, like, that's going to be more confusing to a young quarterback. Carson Beck has been around for a million years now. And if you're not just going to play zone, you're not just going to not get pressure on him. And again, you're not letting your defensive backs use their greatest asset, which again, their physicality, their coverage ability to play man-to-man with just about anyone. Like, if you let them man up against them rather than playing so much zone, which gives their receivers those cushions, it allows Beck to do what he did. And that's just pick them apart for most of the night. If Notre Dame's DBs had actually been able to play one up with Miami's receivers, I think you make Beck make probably at least a mistake or two just by that alone. And then you get some pressure on him. You would have made him make a couple more mistakes, because that's what he showed you last year when he threw 12 interceptions at Georgia.
I mean, look, the pass that he threw that CJ Daniels caught, the one-handed grab at the goal line, that was not a good throw. He just kind of threw it up for grabs. The problem was it was right in between 2 of Notre Dame's best defenders. Neither one of them were aggressive about going after the football. So they allowed a not great throw, which should have been picked off, or at the very least knocked down.
Yeah.
They allowed that to become a great play. You know what I mean? Because they were not aggressive. So the lack of aggressiveness hurt them on the back end. It hurt them on the front end, all of the above. And even a mistake. Because look, let's be honest. If you gave truth serum to Carson Beck, that was a mistake, throwing that ball to the middle of the field like a lollipop, like a rainbow. That was a mistake.
Right.
And he got bailed out by an amazing play by his wide receiver. Right.
See, and I think that I'm not trying to excuse Adon Schuler because he should be playing the ball, but I think as he's sitting there, he's watching that ball. It looks like it's just sailing high over everybody. And he's probably thinking, don't mess it up. So your eye level is looking at that ball where it doesn't look like anyone has a chance at it. And then the next thing you know, he's looking down and it's like, it's right in the hands of Daniels.
It's like high, we teach this in middle school, high point the football, highest point, go up and get it. And he was sitting there like this. You know what I mean? For people on the radio, sitting back, waiting for it to fall into his stomach. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that, like, go get the football. All he had to do was just hit the kid's arm 2 inches. You know what I mean? Like he didn't even have to do anything amazing. Just run into him. I would have taken a pass interference over that. But either way, lack of aggressiveness is the thesis here, right? Of our 5-paragraph essay. Lack of aggressiveness hurt Notre Dame on both sides of the football.
Absolutely. And I am looking, there it is. So Marcus Freeman was asked after the game about the middle 8, the last 4 minutes of the first half, the first 4 minutes of the second half, as well as the turnover margin. Now the answer kind of drifted to one of those 2 topics, but we'll talk about that here in just a second. Here's Marcus Freeman on that.
The turnover, you look at the 2 turnovers, Malachi's got to have better ball security, and we can't let that tip ball. It's almost like you didn't want JG to tip it again, when he's trying to be a football player, because it got popped in there, and they obviously they got the interception. We got to create more takeaways on defense. Right, we pride ourselves in being able to create takeaways. We didn't create any takeaways. We got to be intentional about it. And so the middle eight, I don't know exactly what it was, but obviously you're telling me we didn't win it. But more importantly, we got to take care of football. That's a week one emphasis. It's a total season emphasis, but the majority of teams that win the turnover margin week one are going to win that game. And they knew that. I knew that. We just didn't win it today, and we got to fix it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Double guns there. So again, he didn't talk as much about the middle eight. 14-0. That was the middle eight.
Well, thank goodness he didn't talk more about it, because what he did say about it blew my mind.
Yeah. Miami scored the touchdown at the end of the first half. They doubled up by getting a touchdown at the beginning of the second half, and that was essentially the game. Notre Dame has feasted in those opportunities, and again, ultimately, it's why you call heads, Vince. The coin toss, Notre Dame went out there and called tails. Anyone knows you call heads when you go to midfield, and Miami ends up winning the toss because Notre Dame called tails, and it landed on heads, and it gave them the middle eight. I'm joking, of course, about but
oh my gosh,
I mean, the turnover margin again, Vince. It goes back to what we were just talking about. If you're going to play basically a passive game plan with all that zone and you're not going to get any pressure, you don't make any disruptive plays. You don't cause turnovers. And ultimately, Notre Dame dodged a bullet when they, when Malachi Fields committed that fumble deep in the red zone there. But the second turnover turned into 3 points, and that 3 points ultimately turned out to be the difference in the game. Notre Dame couldn't force any turnovers of their own.
Yeah, I mean, that the middle eight part, I want to respond to that, because when he said, "Oh, you're telling me we didn't win the middle eight," were you there? Did you watch the same game that we did, Coach? I appreciate the fact that he doesn't want to throw his players under the bus and all of those different things, but it's still okay to be honest too. And when you get up there and you say the offensive line played well, and I guess we lost the middle eight, and all of these different things. Look, CJ Carr left the field after throwing a pretty impressive touchdown, to tie the game at 7, and didn't see the field again until they were down 21-7.
You
lost the middle eight.
Think about it that way. That's
you
right.
Lost the middle eight, dude. You want to talk about setting up your rookie quarterback for success? You did not, sir. And so that was tough. That was a tough thing to hear, because again, Notre Dame's usually good in the middle eight. That was quite the headline throughout the playoff about Notre Dame and the middle eight and all of that. And holy smokes, that was I can't believe he said that. I guess you're telling me we lost that? Yes, Coach. I'm telling you that you lost the middle eight, because it was very poor. Very poor.
Yes, it was. Let's take our final timeout, and we'll come back with some more thoughts. We've got rapid fire coming up. We haven't even talked about CJ Carr really at all, I don't think, and we will talk about him more in rapid fire in the second hour of the show. But we got some more thoughts on this Notre Dame Miami game, as we'll continue to do that all show long. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding down hour one of Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com with Vince DeDario. I'm Sean Stires. Vince, we could have 3 hours, I think. And I don't know if we'd cover all the stuff that I plan to try to talk about.
Well,
tonight.
Luckily we have 2 weeks because there's no game
It's true.
on Saturday. So, we've got plenty of time to bemoan the situation at Notre Dame. Eventually, we'll have to turn the page to Texas A&M, but not today.
No,
Not today.
not at all. What do you want to talk about? Do we have time? What do we have time to talk about here? We got about 3 minutes before this hour ends.
Can we talk about CJ Carr? Maybe be a little positive?
We'll save that for rapid fire.
Okay,
I feel
fair enough.
like we could probably fill rapid fire with that if we want.
That's fair.
You want to just talk about the fact that the run game was non-existent with Jeremiyah Love and Jadarian? Do we have even time to touch on that?
Probably not enough. But the fact that they combined, ran the ball 16 times. I think my bigger issue is yes, they neglected Love and all of those different, and I don't disagree with that. But after what I thought was the most Notre Dame drive of the game, and with Jadarian Price's, I call it the Jadarian Price drive, the one that got them down, scored a touchdown, right?
Yeah.
That was the most Notre Dame offensive drive I've seen in a long time, and they never let him touch the ball the rest of the game, and that was the first half. What happened there?
I said it as well, and I think it had to do with the fumble that CJ Carr had to jump on. He fumbled the ball. That's my guess is that he came out because of that. We saw Dylan McCullough hold Audric Estime to that standard. Your fumble, you're coming out, and that's got to be the only explanation. That was never, it didn't come up in the post game, but that's got to be the only explanation, because I thought the same thing. It's why was Jadarian Price at the very least, if it wasn't going to be Jeremiyah Love, why wasn't he more involved in the game plan after that? Because you look, Love ends up 10 carries for 33 yards. Price on that drive, 6 carries for 45 yards. When Price hit that 15-yard run late in that drive, I think it was maybe his second or third carry of that drive. The team at that point had 21 net rushing yards. And of course, he hit the 30-yarder, in that drive that gets him down to the red zone. And it's look, you're not running the ball effectively. You really, until that drive with Price, hadn't tried to assert yourself, with the run game. At the very least, the kind of run that Price had with that 30-yarder should have given them a blueprint for things that Jeremiyah Love could also do. Use that speed to get outside, because they really hadn't tried to do that at all to that point. And then they never go back to it afterwards.
My only argument to if in fact he was benched because of the fumble, then why wasn't Malachi Fields benched because of the fumble? He clearly wasn't. He touched the ball one time and fumbled, and he was right back on the field.
It's a position coach standard.
But it's a different position coach than it was before.
But that's apparently his standard, is what look.
Well,
you let a position coach bench a fullback for an entire season once because of a fumble.
Man, how long have you been holding on to that one?
I don't, again, it's the only answer.
I know.
The explanation I can think of.
You're not wrong. It's just they never even went back to those concepts, it felt like. You know what I mean? And so that's also part of the issue. But the underutilization of the run game was criminal in nature in the game on Sunday. You know what I mean? It was absolutely criminal.
Bobby says keeper. So end of first hour. Okay. CJ Carr did some nice things against Miami. We will definitely say that. And we will talk a lot about CJ Carr coming up in Rapid Fire. Joe with some compliments. That fullback became a great linebacker.
See, it's more valuable on the other side of the ball.
Right. All right, a timeout for the top of the hour. We've got more in Rapid Fire in hour number 2 coming up. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. It's hour 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com, along with Vince DeDario. I'm Sean Stires. We've got about 35-ish, 34-ish minutes here before we've got to wrap this show up because we have an early out tonight with South Bend Cubs baseball coming up at 6:45 this evening. I want to hit a couple questions that came up in the YouTube chat, Vince, before we get into some of the other stuff. We're going to talk about CJ Carr here in a second. Facilitate asks, if the game is played in South Bend, does Notre Dame still lose? Take off the mute button.
If they play the way that they did on the lines, it doesn't matter where they played this. They could have played it on the moon. They could have played it in Notre Dame Stadium. It doesn't matter. They still lose. I'm fairly confident of that.
I don't feel, like the rain was a little bit of a factor, but both teams played in it, so I don't think that you can blame that.
It didn't stop them from throwing the ball around. You know what I mean? Like I had to text you to ask if it was still raining because you know how it's hard to tell on TV. And
it was actually hard to tell just looking at the press box as well. And I don't think the crowd was that big a factor.
I don't either.
So
yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, how much of a factor was Michael Irvin running around and Jimmy Johnson cranking up the hurricane warning? And,
oh, those friggin' Cowboys, man.
It hurt me. It hurt me to see that. It really did.
I'm watching that documentary, though, by the way.
Are you? What do you think so far?
About halfway through.
Yeah.
It's mostly, I think, stuff that I knew, but I was 10, 11, 12, 13, in the early 90s, and then as they grew, they got up. I was more high school, so I remember a lot of that stuff. But I remember after they were good. You know what I mean? I don't remember the lean years leading up to it. I remember when they were freaking good.
Oh, I remember the lean years. I remember.
I'm sure you do.
Trust me.
I didn't realize that the controversy of the firing of Tom Landry and all that kind of stuff. But it's a good documentary. I'm into it. I'm in.
Glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, just figure I'd throw that in just to make people upset that we're talking about the Cowboys.
Yeah, exactly. See, and I can blame you. It's not even me talking about it.
I brought it up, baby.
I wish I was a domer. See, now that's a YouTube handle that I
like that.
Say, when you make it, don't at least use caps in the middle so you break it up.
Right.
Says, any chance the coaches rolled out the most generic blank ever just to see what they had? I could see that if you were playing Tennessee State or Ball State or, whoever, and you weren't playing a good team. I don't think that is what happened Sunday in the loss to Miami.
No, I don't think that had anything to do with it. These coaches aren't playing to throw vanilla stuff out there. They had to win this game, and coaches.
You're playing a top 10 team on the road.
Right.
You can't.
They didn't throw out you. Now, will the playbook be more extensive as the year goes on? Yes, because that's just how it works. But they didn't throw out generic stuff. No.
Yeah. Person with Twitter handle I can't read says exactly. So, Mr. Polly, I don't know. All right, here's Marcus Freeman. His thoughts on CJ Carr, his first career start Sunday at Miami.
Be a really good quarterback. Everything that I've thought he was going to be. His ceiling is so high. He's going to have to learn to take this loss and. Not let it beat him up too much because he's an ultra competitor but he's he's a gamer, man. He performs when the lights are on. He prepares his tail off. He had answers for questions that myself or Coach Jim Brock would have, and he's going to do great things, man. It's just a start for him.
Was CJ Carr is he the silver lining that comes out of this whole thing?
Oh, my goodness. There's no doubt about it. He's 100% the silver lining that comes out of this. I think there was a lot of people that didn't know what to expect from CJ Carr, and you can throw us in there to a degree. But people were questioning his poise, and they were questioning, how's he going to handle the environment and all. Check. He checked all the boxes. Now, did he make some mistakes? Yeah. Of course he made some mistakes. No doubt about it. There's a couple misreads and, some things like that. And when you're getting sacked, sometimes it's just okay to take the sack and not try to chuck it, things like that. But man, you give that kid time. He throws dimes. The weather, the moment, none of that got to him. And he was throwing no look passes for touchdowns, Sean Stires. He's not the problem. CJ Carr is not the problem at all.
No. Not at all. I mean, and to be able, like, to be, because again, like, this is a first time starting quarterback. And if I won't say that he outplayed Carson Beck, but I think it was at least a dead heat.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and especially if you're going on all the experience that a guy like Beck has versus the inexperience that CJ Carr has at the, he played even with a guy who going into last season, people were saying, oh, this is going to be the first pick in the draft. And, all that different kind of, like, he, at the very least, played dead even on the road against a quarterback with a lot more experience than him. And nobody came out of there going, they lost the game because of CJ Carr. Absolutely. Well, I won't say absolutely nobody, because I did see some, very misinformed. Oh, see, they should have gone with Kenny Minchie instead of CJ Carr. If you're thinking that, I don't know what game you're watching Sunday night, because that is the vast minority opinion of that game Sunday.
So, Irish for Life 99 says, unless we can fix the pass pro, we may see Minchie or Ty, meaning Buckner, I assume. But here's the deal. The only way that you're going to see those guys is if CJ Carr gets hurt. And I mean, maybe that's what he was referring to here, like fixing the pass pro because CJ is going to die.
I think he's saying, like, the pass protection because, not that CJ Carr is the problem, but because that's the hand that he's being dealt with the offensive line in front of him. And I don't think that will be the coach's mentality. Like, that would be the reason that you make a change at this point.
And they're clearly not afraid to run CJ Carr. And the gap of running ability between Minchie and Carr is not the Grand Canyon that people think that it is. You know what I mean? Like that. CJ Carr is a better runner than you think he is, and Kenny Minchie is not as good of a runner as you think he is. And so that brings them a lot closer together. You're not getting a major advantage by putting Kenny Minchie in the game from an athletic standpoint. You're just not.
Right. And going back to what we were talking about in the first hour of the show, the fact that CJ Carr had more carries than Jadarian Price is just baffling. Like, they ran him a few times. It makes sense. You kind of catch Miami off guard a little bit because I don't think that they were expecting that, but he had 11 carries for 16 yards. He was sacked 3 times. So that's 8 total
carries,
design carries that he have. He only had 2 fewer than Jeremiyah Love, 10 carries that
and
Love
2 more than Jadarian Price.
Yeah. Right. That's a problem, that you were leaning on the quarterback that much. I realize he got into the end zone, but like the fact that you're doing that and not just giving the ball more to the best, the most dynamic player that you have on offense, that's the bigger issue, is that Jeremiyah Love was not, as involved as the game plan as he obviously needed to be.
Yeah, I don't like CJ Carr had more carries than Love, like that. I don't. I'm looking at the stat sheet and I'm going to complain about something because it's not 100% accurate. But I will say some of the designed runs that they had for CJ Carr were a little mind blowing and baffling to me. You don't want that kid to take a bunch of hits. Like, I get it on the goal line and they were in man. And so that was a great place to do a QB draw. And obviously he scored on it.
Right.
And there was a couple other ones that I liked, but that's it. Like, I didn't like the 3rd and 1.
Yeah, the 3rd and 1
where he just got annihilated in the backfield.
Just hand the ball to Jeremiyah Love.
Right.
At that point.
Exactly.
Like, you don't, that's not, again, you're supposed to be a physical offensive line, and you've got an asset like Jeremiyah Love in the backfield. Don't overthink it. Just hand your weapon the football and let him get a first down for you. That's the one that I had the biggest problem with.
Like, he ended up with 11 carries on the stat sheet. He should have ended up with about 5 on the stat sheet, maybe 6, because of a couple of designed, and then the 3 sacks. Like, you have to take that into account. There should have been maybe 2 to 3 design runs for him, and I would have been fine with it. Some of those were very questionable. I felt like Denbrock was looking out onto the field and seeing 13 and having flashbacks, to last year. And he's like, oh, no, we got this. No problem. Just give it to 13. Different 13. He wears a different size jersey, man. Like, that's not what's no. All
right. So you mentioned the no-look pass, and you didn't mention the scramble that came before it.
Seriously.
But here is CJ Carr talking about that play that resulted in the no-look touchdown pass to Micah Gilbert.
When it's needed, I guess we we had 3-by-1 set with 2 ends to the field. They were playing some sort of middle field open coverage. It was just really low to squeeze a slant in there. Felt backside pressure, so just tried to, make a guy miss, did it, and Micah Gilbert made a great catch, great effort to get open in the end zone, and ended in 7.
The catch by Micah Gilbert was the least great part of that. I appreciate the quarterback dishing out compliments.
Yes.
But that was the least great. Congratulations to Micah Gilbert getting your first touchdown catch. That is great for you, Micah Gilbert. I'm not taking anything away from you. But that was the least spectacular part of that play. Let's start with the 3 dips and doodles and dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge, that CJ Carr was doing with the 300-pound defensive tackle bearing down on him first, to escape the rush there, and then the no-look pass to finish it off. But I think the answer that CJ Carr gave there, Vince, like on top of that whole thing, what do you think of that?
I mean, the whole time I'm listening, it's like, this kid knows football. Like,
yes,
he understands football. This is one of the reasons that he's the starter, is because he can dissect a defense. Like, he didn't really put the ball in. I mean, he did put the ball in harm's way on that screen. We can all agree on that. But, like, he understands where to put the football and how to play this game, and that's why he's going to continue to get better. And I mean, look, anybody that says CJ Carr is unathletic needs to go watch that play right there. Now, yes, he's outrunning defensive linemen. I get it. But him going back and forth like that made a guy fall over. Like, he fell over trying to chase him.
Yes, and this is a true freshman making his first career start. Many more veteran guys would panic with a man like with a 300-pound defensive tackle bearing down on him. Whoop, he makes one move. Whoop, he makes another move. Whoop, he makes another move. And then the guy falls down, he gets away, and then he no-look passes.
And still has his eyes downfield, looking for an open guy.
Eyes downfield the whole time. It was, you had Brett Favre, you had, Matthew Stafford, you had Tony Romo, you had even some Ian Book mixed in there with those moves that he's making. It gets like, that is stuff that comes, that is like innate instinct that the guy has. Like, no matter how much film you study, like those moves that he made just to get himself free, like that's not something that comes with film study. Film study comes, again, like knowing the look that he had and what he needed to do against that look. That was all, like, you can tell how much the work that CJ Carr puts into it. But the ability to do that stuff, that is him. And that is, like, I think that was the first wow play of the night, if I'm not mistaken. Did you tabulate the wow plays?
I did not. I should have.
I think I had 2 or 3, but
it's the touchdown. Obviously, you got the throw to Malachi Fields was an amazing throw. That's a wow play. And I texted you, like, who gets the wow on that? Was it Carr for the throw or Fields for the catch? Because they were like, I think the catch maybe outweighed the throw by a little bit, but it was still a great not by
throw.
Much.
So.
It's like 55-45. If we're doing 100 total, but it was impressive. And again, that's what happens when you give him time. He makes good throws, right?
Yeah.
And he has a lot of confidence in his receivers, which I appreciate as well, right? So he was able to make some wow plays. And we said that was going to happen. And we also said that there were going to be some plays, and that would have been the interception. So, he had counted for 3 touchdowns and over 200 yards passing. In our
career start.
Yeah, in our spread option show, I said stay away from CJ Carr's passing numbers because we just don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be rainy, and how much are they going to trust him and all of that. I guess if you pounded the over, you were in good shape because it was set at like 180 or something like that, and he eclipsed that no problem and threw for 2 touchdowns and ran for 1. So, I'm not saying he's going to do that every game, but I have a feeling it's going to be more often than not.
So the one whoopsie or, whatever, wows and whoopsies, maybe that's it.
Ooh, there you go.
You think about that? Whoopsie. I just made that up. Here is Marcus Freeman's response to the response that CJ Carr made after the interception.
Great. Great. Came back and drove us down for a field goal. And then the next drive after that was a 75-yard touchdown drive. So I think it's pretty impressive after you throw an interception off the tip ball.
So what do you think of, the response that Carr had after that interception, again, first career start, some guys might have crumbled after that.
We didn't get much from, fall camp and everything that went on. But what we did get from many, many people is that, yes, CJ threw a lot of interceptions, but the difference was after he threw them, he would make a big play, or, they didn't affect him. And it was, leave that play behind and move forward. So, it was kind of anticipated. Plus, that's just who he is. And I think that's who we've come to know, or what we felt like we would come to know when it comes to CJ Carr. And that's what I talked about, the poise of him and the way he handled himself. Like, they showed him during pregame. He looked like he was ready to roll, man. Like, there was no fear in his eyes. He was just like, I'm here to play a game. Let's get after it. You know what I mean? So I'm not overly surprised by it. And I don't think the coaching staff was overly surprised by it, because I think that's one of the reasons that he earned the job, to be honest.
No, I agree. And, again, like when you see the instincts that he has and the ability to do, and obviously the skills to go with it, not just the instincts, but the skills and the knowledge to go with it. This is ultimately why, like you gotta maybe take the chains off him a little bit and just start letting him cook, because I don't think that he's the one you want to put the restraints on when you do have some other issues that you've got to get figured out. Like the bigger issue, I think, is still, why aren't you feeding Jeremiyah Love and or Jadarian Price? How do those two guys combine for 16 carries in the game when you do have a rookie quarterback? And again, I know, going back to what Marcus Freeman was saying, like there were RPOs and these are reads. It's like, just don't overthink it. Just call a little run play.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it and call a quarterback sneak with CJ Carr when you've got Jeremiyah Love standing beside him or behind him. Just hand him the ball and let him get the yard that you need to get.
I completely agree with you. That is the biggest thing, that I think they did overthink the RPO game and all of that, maybe hoping that he would hand it off or whatever. But okay, he's going to read it out and he's going to do what he's supposed to do on an RPO. If you want to run the ball, then just call the run play.
Well, because look, the other part of this as well is Mike Denbrock, because of the helmet technology. Mike Denbrock has the ability to talk to talk to the quarterback, in this case, obviously CJ Carr, on the field until the clock hits 20 seconds. So as they're going up to the line of scrimmage still, and you're seeing, Denbrock is seeing the look that Miami is giving them defensively, he can say, okay, if this guy is this, then, just hand it off to Love, like there can be an option for Carr going up to the line of scrimmage that Denbrock can just kind of key him in on and just say, hey, we're handing it to Jeremiyah here.
That's a good point. I always forget about the fact that they've got the in-helmet technology, and you're 100% correct. Like, I hope that they don't use the excuse, well, we were just running RPOs and that's what he read, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, well, if you wanted to give the ball to Jeremiyah Love or Jadarian Price, call a run play. You know what I mean? Call or tell him, do not pull this one.
Right.
That's okay too.
Whatever it happens to be.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's not like Notre Dame was going to the very end of the play clock either. Like they were moving pretty good, and so they had plenty of time to let him know those things.
Final timeout, more rapid fire. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat. Winding down Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com with Vince DeDario, Sean Stires. A comment from Stephen B. in the YouTube chat. To be honest, I think the biggest silver lining from the game is that the wide receiver group looks elite. Gilbert, Faison, and Fields before the catch, after the catch, they look great. I still think CJ Carr, but the receiver room did look pretty good. And I know, Vince, that Jaden Greathouse was not a factor, and in some circles that is a topic as well. I don't feel like he wasn't a factor in the game because of anything that he did or didn't do. It was just like because of all the screens, everything else. It just like he, the down the field aspect of the game was very rarely a factor. And I think ultimately, as this season goes on, both he and Pauling, who wasn't a factor out there, are both going to be like very involved in this offense eventually.
I didn't realize how much Pauling actually played until I went back and watched
the
game, to be honest with
He's
you.
out there a lot.
And Greathouse didn't have a good game. And I realized the ball didn't really come his way, but he was not good at blocking in this game. He was not good at all. But again, that's just part of it. And maybe he was frustrated he wasn't getting the ball. I don't know.
I mean, maybe, like with all the screens that they did, maybe it's worth like getting a big physical guy like him who's got some short quarter moves, like the ball in his hands,
and I'm
get
sure
him
they
a little something.
Attempted to do that at one point or another.
Yeah. Used him more as a blocker instead, but
Faison
wasn't great at that.
Faison had a good game to begin with. He had some issues, but all of them had issues, and then all of them did good things too. So look, I think the wide receiver group was asked to do more. And they were given more opportunities, and they were able to show that they are actually a talented group of people, which I think they weren't really given credit for in the past. And so I think you're going to see those guys come out even more and more and more as the season goes on, and they take the shackles off of CJ Carr, because I do think the group is talented, but they also have a quarterback that's going to get them the football. So, we're going to see more of that moving forward.
I'm curious to see what the response to this is on both sides of the ball. Unfortunately, now there's a track record for Notre Dame. It's like they need, they need things to cave in to kind of get themselves a hole to dig out of. I mean, we saw what that was last year. Not great that you have it in week one, even though it's really only one game removed from when they had it last year. But you do put yourself behind the 8 ball now, as much as it did come down to the wire, as much as they were able to respond, it stinks that you have to have something to respond to, because the margin for error is so much thinner now.
Well, it's definitely thin now, because now you're at the same place that you were last year after game 2, where you got to win all your games, and they're in that neighborhood. Like, could they get in as a 10-2 team? Sure, especially if one of those losses is to Miami, and Miami does what I think that they could potentially do against a fairly weak ACC, ACC period. I'll put a period there. But your second loss is going to have to be equally as tough. Now, the problem is, if you lose to your 2 best teams on the schedule in the first 2 games of the year, even if you rattle off 10 in a row, you might sneak in the backside, of the tournament and have to go on the road and things of that nature. That's not something that you want to do. So essentially, look, 11-1, you're in. Like, you're in, no questions asked, and you're probably hosting a game, most likely. Based on what I saw this past weekend from a lot of teams, I think you're in, and you're in solidly. You lose another one, you got to get some help. And so they're up against it now. They got to go undefeated. They got to go 11-0 here moving forward if they want to control their own destiny.
I want to play this from last night prior to the North Carolina-Texas A&M game. Everyone's favorite bromantic couple, Nick Saban and Pat McAfee, did the ESPN pregame show before that game in Chapel Hill last night. They had some thoughts on the big college football matchups in the first weekend of the season.
Every team has the best opportunity to improve from week 1 to week 2. Because really going into the season, you don't really know what you have for sure as a coach. And you're always very anxious about what might happen in the first game. And I'm sure they're all disappointed, players, coaches alike. But they do have a great chance to improve from week 1 to week 2. That's when you usually make the biggest improvement. LSU, Miami, and Ohio State. all really impressed me. But I think Texas, Notre Dame, and Clemson all have a really good chance to have great teams this year, too, if they make the progress they're capable of.
Yeah, and we have to remember not to punish the teams that schedule big-time games.
That's right.
Remember, we really like Saturday. That was a great kickoff to Week 1.
Yeah.
3 top 10 teams are going to have a loss after Week 1. They're going to have 0 wins. They're under 500 for the first time, I think, in Alabama. When were you born?
1951.
I think that's the last time they were under 500. I'm reading it on the internet right. It's like the teams that win, though, too, these huge games could be rat poison. So Week 1 to Week 2 could be vastly different teams as well. It's like right now is the time to make moves. If you lost, you got punched in the mouth. That's good perspective for the team. Like, hey, we're not as good as we thought we were. And if you win, that could ruin you, too.
All right, so there's McAfee at the end. Saban seemed really happy to say that he was born in 1951, reminding everybody just how old he actually is. But I feel like it's a good point, and like you've said a couple of times, you're somewhat surprised to see Notre Dame remaining in the top 10 this week, and I thought it kind of like the things that they were saying kind of played into that. Miami moved from 10 up to number 5. Notre Dame only fell from number 6 to number 9 in the polls this week. I feel like being competitive on the road against a top 10 team, just a 3-point loss, that not worked in Notre Dame's favor, but with the loss, I think it was respected by the pollsters. And to McAfee's point, one of the better points he's probably made, you're not penalizing these good teams for playing somebody in Week 1 of the season.
That was probably the best point I've ever heard Pat McAfee make ever. But he's right. I mean, don't punish the teams for scheduling tough games up front.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Look, I still think Notre Dame should have won that game. They're a better football team. They have a better roster, all of those things. But they didn't. But they also get some credit for going down to Miami in Week 1 and a night game, all of those different things, and basically making it competitive. And they had a chance to win at the end, and they just didn't do it. They just didn't have enough time. So I do feel like Notre Dame is in a good spot right now, as crazy as that sounds. I do feel like Notre Dame's in a good spot, sitting at number 9 with the rest of this schedule sitting ahead of them. They still hold their own destiny. Like I said, they are in charge of what they do from here on out, and they have a chance to still make this season special. It's still a tough pill to swallow what we saw on Sunday, but they can still, run the table, and they can still do what they need to do to get into the playoff and have a shot at doing what they did last year and taking that extra step.
Yeah. And again, like Miami being good is good for the ACC. It is good for teams like Notre Dame as well, because again, like going to the point of what those guys were talking about there, like Notre Dame, we just played the clip last week from Neuheisel and Dan Patrick taking shots at Notre Dame's schedule, like, oh, you're playing these ACC teams. Well, if the ACC actually gets somebody besides Clemson who is good, that helps Notre Dame. If they're going to start playing Notre Dame more often, they're going to start playing Clemson more often, like that. Like it's a lot harder to take shots at the ACC schedule when you've got a program like Miami. If Florida State bounces back this year, look how far Alabama fell in the polls this week. They fell from 8 all the way to number 21
because they looked like garbage.
Yeah, they did.
And they quit
like garbage,
right? Like we're talking about, Notre Dame not quitting and that you shouldn't have to have that conversation. Well, they're having that conversation in Tuscaloosa right now because those guys quit.
Yeah, real quick, Joseph in the YouTube chat says, what about the apparent lack of urgency? I still think, especially from the defensive perspective, that was more about the game plan that they played with, like zone and, as opposed to man-to-man, taking, Notre Dame's aggressiveness away from him. Now, the offensive line, that's the specific, like point of contact. That's a specific issue with the offense that's got to get figured out fast if Notre Dame's going to compete against anybody this year, Vince.
No question about it. They are absolutely going to have to get it figured out. So, yeah, agreed.
That's going to do it for tonight. For Vince DeDario, I'm Sean Stires. A lot of great stuff in the YouTube chat. We'll, of course, be here all week long. It's a bye week, but we're still talking Notre Dame football all week. I think Brian Driscoll is going to join us on tomorrow's show. We'll double check with that and find out. We're going to wrap it up with that. We've got South Bend Cubs baseball coming up here on WSBT. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.